the dawn in the battle's chill. Flags unfurled, we march uphill. Hearts like fire, unbreakable will. Voices united, echoing still. For freedom we stand and are unmet. This long and struggle our spirits set. Hands clasped, time, strength unspent. In unity we find our lament. Under starry skies our dreams ignite. Facing the dark with fearless light. Though shadows fall, they cannot light a love for land, our fighting might. For freedom we stand and are unmet. The storm and struggle our spirits set. Hands clasped, tight, strength unspent. In unity we find our lament. Under starry skies our dreams ignite. Facing the dark with fearless light. Though shadows fall, they cannot light our love for land, our fighting might.
Yes, yes, indeed. Welcome back, everybody. I am Joseph Rose, your host for the Common Sense Pros and Cons podcast. We talk about everything over here, right? Everything. Religion, politics, philosophy, history, economics, everything that your mom and dad told you not to talk about at the dinner table. If you're from my generation, I imagine that a lot of other people's parents taught them to be activists and shit like that. And we've seen where that's gone our country. But as I always say over here, there's only one kind of common sense, and it is you will be angry. Not always a dick, but no, fuck you. Just kidding. I am. It was good. It was good. It was short. Just kind of little hangout. But look, we're gonna jump back into some other news. It's important. It's very important to be aware, right? It's very important. You need to be involved politically because politics is literally the art of governing people, right? That's literally what politics are. So you should be involved. I don't really support activism. I do for some things, but what we see nowadays in 2025 United States and like the Western world are 24/7 activists. They're an activist for everything. They've been radicalized. It's crazy. And Matt, I don't know if you're still here, but welcome in, by the way. I would say largely for the most part, being an activist is actually bad. I think it radicalizes people to a lot of things that they shouldn't really be involved with and whatnot. But there really is no news. But we're just gonna go over a little bit of stuff. I'm just trying to hang out, kind of basically. And there wasn't really any news earlier. So let's fucking get into it, and I'm gonna prove to y'all why, like that there is no news. Okay. How was your day, Matt? How's work and all that? Okay. Katy Perry blasts off into space during a successful Blue Origin launch. You mean Blue Origin, the company owned by the world's second richest man who cheated on his wife and then his wife divorced him and left him and took half of his wealth? And they're going to pretend like they're propping up women. And see, I don't really care about all the shit I just said. Right? That's the honest truth. That Jeff Bezos's business is his business with him and his relationship and stuff like that. Just like Elon Musk and his children, all that. That's all their business, right? None of that's my fucking business. Okay? But the only way to expose the hypocrisy is say shit like that, right? It comes off very stupid. I'm not actually that stupid. I don't believe in that shit. But the left does believe in that shit. Okay? They're the ones who like champion the DEI and woke narratives and stuff like that. And I know they want to try to say that people overuse DEI or woke and they use it to just like they're against it because they're against women and all that kind of shit. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're tired of you doing dumb shit like this, right? And then you think it's worth the news. This article is from Variety, whatever the fuck that is, and it's by Cynthia Littleton and Jem Eswad, right? Painful day at work. We had a big delivery today, about $130. So we had to unload each one, bring 70 pounds. It took us 2 hours. Why are you guys unloading boxes? You guys shouldn't be unloading boxes. That's my first question. But like, think about it, guys. So let me read the I'll read the fucking article, right? Pop superstar Katy Perry and CBS Mornings anchor Gayle King were among the 6 passengers Monday on an all-female voyage into the edge of space via Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin space travel business. Y'all do realize that when we first, not just us, but also the Soviets, when mankind first sent people into space, into the moon and shit like that, like, I don't know about y'all, right? But when I was in school and I was learning about that stuff and they said, wow, this is the first man in space, I didn't go, wow, that's the first male in space, right? They said man as the shorthand for mankind, right? And that's the way that it was taught to me, is that it was short for mankind because it was an achievement for humanity, not for men, right? So they say first man in space. I guess all women are just brought up to go, wow, look at the patriarchy, right? Oh my God, first man in space, so we need a first woman in space. No, right? Right? Just like the saying, one small step for man, one giant leap for all mankind, right? Because his one step for man was for himself, and then the big step was for mankind, for humanity. Okay? But this is why it's woke and it's DEI. All things that have existed up until DEI, it wasn't like pushing, wow, first man in space because he's a man. No, it was like, it was all encompassing. But Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket soared into space after blast off from West Texas launch facility at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday. The 8-minute flight traveled more than 62 miles into the atmosphere past the Kármán line, which per Blue Origin is the internationally recognized boundary of space. Well, I just want y'all to know that it's either it's from Blue Origin and it's not internationally recognized because you're saying that it's from the company and nowhere else, or it is in fact internationally recognized as the boundary of space and it's not per Blue Origin. It's per an international standard set, right? This is the problem with doing DEI and woke shit, right? Variety magazine having 2 women write this article, right? They're more concerned about the stupidity that they're about to put in this article than actually appropriately fucking disseminating information. It's fucking insane, right? So it's either like, sure, you can say that like as Blue Origin stated that it's the internationally recognized fucking boundary of space, but they're saying per Blue Origin, which indicates that they're putting basically liability on Blue Origin that it is or it is not, right? And look, the Kármán line is mainly used for legal and regulatory purposes of differentiating between aircraft and spacecraft. Uh, while named after Theodore von Kármán, who calculated a theoretical limit of altitude for aeroplane flight, blah, blah, blah. The Kármán line is mainly used for, blah, blah, blah. Um, Most international organizations and regulatory agencies, including the United Nations, accept the FAI's Kármán line definition or something close to it, which there you go, means that it's internationally recognized and depicted as such. So it's not per Blue Origin. Jesus Christ, man. Like, fuck. Oh, stupid people. The new Shepard rocket. Oh, sorry. Blue Origin promises passengers in its burgeoning space tourism business that the trip offers the chance to experience several minutes of weightlessness and witnessing life-changing views of Earth. The module containing the astronauts suspended from 3 parachutes landed several minutes after the rocket. The new Shepard rocket operates autonomously without a pilot. Joining Perry and King are Bezos' fiance, journalist and philanthropist Lauren Sanchez, engineer and NASA veteran Aisha Bowie, activist and scientist Amanda Nguyen, activist. What is that? Like, what kind of credibility is that? Right? You're describing someone who's a journalist and a philanthropist, which are their achievements, an engineer and NASA veteran, which are their achievements, scientist, which is her achievements, but activist isn't an achievement. And movie producer Carrie Ann Flynn. The launch is designed to bring attention to women in aeronautics. Do you guys see now? That is literally what DEI in the woke agenda is, right? They segregate themselves from the entirety of mankind. So they literally disenfranchise themselves and then say because they're disenfranchised, which is predominantly due to their it's like of their own volition, they then do stupid shit like this to try to validate themselves. There have already been women in actual space, not just at the fucking Kármán line. Like actual women who've been on the International Space Station in actual space. Aisha Bowie here is a NASA veteran and an engineer. That doesn't mean that she's an astronaut. She just worked at NASA. Right? But that means NASA, she was in the field of aeronautics. Women have been in the field of aeronautics since the field of aeronautics, basically. Right? Why is it that when a man does something, it's all for mankind, but when a woman does something, it's for women? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Right? Perry posted on Instagram on Sunday, I gotta sing in space. But when asked about that comment during a pre-recorded CBS interview with all of the new astronauts, she said, "You're not an astronaut because you go to space. You're are you a pilot because you're on a plane?" No. You're fucking not. Like that's not how it works. You're an astronaut because you're an actual astronaut. You've undergone the training, right? You understand the field. You know things about the field. The only person potentially like, and I'm not saying just because you're a journalist and a philanthropist, you can't learn other shit. I'm not one of those people who believes that credentialing is everything, right? But credentialing in some cases, in very important cases, is viable, right? It's verifiable, right? So NASA veteran Aisha Bowie, she's not an astronaut just because she worked for NASA. She's an engineer that worked for NASA, right? You are not an astronaut. I mean, sure, by definition of the word, you can try to claim that you're an astronaut, but we all know it's not. You're not just an astronaut because you go to space. You're not just a pilot or an aviation expert because you fly in a plane. You're not a captain of a ship because you sailed on a boat, right? Because you're a passenger on something. Let me point out to you guys again. They state very plainly right here, the new Shepard rocket operates autonomously without a pilot. Therefore, no one on board is actually an astronaut. The fucking rocket itself does all of the work. Okay? It won't be about me. It will be about this beautiful Earth. I actually appreciate that comment from Katy Perry, right? Because if you get the opportunity to go to space and you want to sing in space, something to me something is deficient. Like something in you is deficient, but clearly maybe Katy Perry might have a good head on her shoulders. I don't actually think so. I think she's a liberal fuck. But I think from up there we will think, "Oh my god, we have to protect our mother." Oh, wow. Yeah, women don't get any credit for anything, and that's why Earth is always referred to as Mother Earth, right? Mother Earth. Wow, that has a female that has female intent, right? Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Oh. Perry or possibly another astronaut did indeed sing during the flight, although what she was singing was unclear. King told CBS News, "I've made no secret of the fact that I'm very nervous but also very excited." The TV coverage cut included footage of people on the ground cheering as the rocket took off and gained altitude. After a couple of minutes, it broke the sound barrier and entered the atmosphere. What's up, big Rinkos? Okay. We don't care about this video. Um, and look, man, I'm not a woman hater. I'm married, right? I'm straight. I love women. Jesus, I'm not a woman hater. I hate when people do this dumb shit because all you're doing is actually increasing a gender divide, right? That's all you're actually doing by this. These women did not achieve anything. They might have hit a personal life achievement for being in space, okay? But they did not actually achieve anything. They just passed the Kármán line, had a couple minutes of brief weightlessness, and then came back down to Earth. That's cool. That's awesome. Sure. But what did they achieve? Women have already been in space. Women have already been to the International Space Station. Women have already literally been astronauts. So why are you trying to push this? Why did you do an all-female voyage? Okay. Why are you pushing articles about women empowerment and women in aeronautics and all of this other stuff unless you are intentionally trying to divide the genders or push a narrative that women are disenfranchised? Guess what? Men have lower life expectancies on average than women. Why is that? Because men are the ones who do more stupid shit. Men are the ones who pioneer in every field and die for us to make discoveries on what we should and shouldn't do, and then women come afterwards. Why are people so offended by that? Are you offended that men crawl around in sewage systems in cities and towns in order to clear out blockages and clean them up and stuff like that disproportionately than women do? Are you upset about that? Do we actually want equality? I don't fucking think so. I know women don't want actual equality. This is why women won't vote in favor of being forced to sign up for the draft, but they think they deserve the right to vote. So they're free of all of societal responsibility, but they're not free from all of but they also have all of societal freedoms. That doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. And if you want to say some stupid shit like women have to be scared of men when they're walking down the street, men are scared of other men when walking down the street. They just don't live in fear. You don't know what another man's fucking capable of. That's such a dumb fucking argument. Oh, why women are oppressed because they're fearful of men? Wow. Women are a little more intelligent than men and they understand that men naturally are larger than them and stronger than them and they're at a natural disadvantage to men. Men who are scared of great white sharks or grizzly bears or lions or something like that are pretty fucking intelligent if you ask me because they know they're at a natural disadvantage to these other species. Fuck, it doesn't even have to be a male of that species. It can be a female of that species. It's a dumb fucking argument. But anyways, the point of this article is that clearly they're just trying to inject more divide and push a woke agenda of women inclusion. And you are actually disenfranchising women by doing this. You are turning people off from the idea of anybody supporting women in any field because you're forcing them. Nobody likes to be forced in anything. Right? And also, if you want men to be more I'm sorry, you could try to resent this, but if you want men to be more receptive of women in fields and stuff like that, you need to start broadcasting the hot ones. That's just how it is, right? The same fucking thing works it's the same way with women. Women want to be broadcasted with a very attractive men. They don't want to see ugly fat slobs or any of that kind of shit, or people who don't work out or something like that. Women want to see attractive people, men want to see attractive people. So if you're going to try to force it, maybe be smart about it. You know, kind of like a new John Wick movie that's coming out that's featuring Ana de Armas. She's basically the female version of John Wick. I haven't heard anyone being resentful about that movie. Not once. Why? Because Ana de Armas has come out and said, no, I'm not John Wick. John Wick is John Wick. And we don't need to make John Wick a woman. Right? We can come up with other creative content. So she is paid respect to her predecessor. Okay? She's a gorgeous woman. And she doesn't push ideologies. All she does is act to the best of her ability, right? By showing her determination and her skill, people and the fact that she is attractive, people are receptive to her. There hasn't been a single bit of bad publicity about the new fucking ballerina movie that's set to come out starring Ana de Armas, which is from the John Wick universe. Why is that? Why is that? Because she's not claiming to be a man. She's claiming to be herself, right? Bezos, founder and chairman of Amazon, was the first to greet the astronauts after landing. He popped open the hatch with a wrench and greeted Sanchez. Perry was next out of the capsule. She knelt and kissed the sandy ground. King emerged and did the same. Launched Blue Origin in 2000, the venture made its first flight in July 2021 with passengers that included Bezos and Wally Funk, a pioneering female astronaut who trained as part of NASA's Mercury program in the 1960s. Damn, she was old as fuck, right? So there you go, right? Wally Funk, a pioneering female astronaut who trained as part of NASA's Mercury program in the 1960s. So what are you talking about? The gravity of the event was reflected by a comment from one announcer who said, after the landing, it's truly remarkable that all these people on the ground have been looking up at the sky for the past several minutes and no one's been looking at their phone. Yeah, no shit, right? Okay. There's that. That's done. We don't care about that shit anyways because it's retarded. Okay? We all agree. We all agree it's retarded. Okay? So now we have this, right? Because I was reading the comments and I was like, these comments are fucking retarded. All right. So this is about a woman that Ron DeSantis has removed. Okay? Apparently twice. Because she's under a grand jury investigation for things she has done. Okay? Let me get this plugged in real quick. Can you hear it, Matt? Nope, because it's muted.
Maybe not this hurricane season, but maybe in time for next, bypassing the bureaucracy and the red tape, and then let us go ahead and get the job done for our people. Yes.
Oh, fucking ass.
So the question is there any updates regarding the grand jury investigation into State Attorney Monique Worrell?
There you go. So Monique Worrell is under a grand jury investigation in the state of Florida. Okay? So she has been removed because of the grand jury investigation. When people are being investigated, they are arrested by the police and they are put in jail. Okay? Some, like, more often than not. It's very rare for people to not be picked up while under investigation or something like that. Right? So
My
let's
answer
finish.
is I'm not privy to what goes on in grand jury investigations, so I'm not the right guy to ask. Those are secret investigations. That was not an investigation that I am leading. I can call for the Florida Supreme Court to certify statewide grand juries, but that's the extent, of my authority that I've exercised. Now, with respect to Monique Worrell, as you recall, I suspended her from office because she was not enforcing the laws as they are written on the book. She had her own agenda, and that was putting the people at Central Florida at risk. I think what happened.
There you go. The state attorney was selectively enforcing the law, which is not, okay? Technically, it does play into it, but that is not what a state attorney is meant to do. An attorney who works for the state, right? Okay? They are supposed to prosecute crimes that come across their desk in violation of the law. Yes, based on who filed the complaint and whatever the court and all the other agencies and all the parties involved, they come to a conclusion to cut a deal or something like that, then that is what they do. Okay, but selectively not prosecuting crime has led to a two-tiered system of justice in this nation where conservatives are being prosecuted for crimes, right? And I'm not talking about different crimes. I'm talking about you will have a conservative who commits a crime and a leftist who commits the exact same crime, and the conservative will be prosecuted and the leftist will not. We saw this with the riots of January 6th, but we did not see this with the riots of Black Lives Matter. Basically, all Black Lives Matter fucking protesters and rioters were let go, or not even investigated, not tried, not even jailed, not arrested, none of that. They were just let go. But there was a major crackdown on conservatives in their riot of January 6th, which wasn't an insurrection. You're fucking retarded if you think that was an insurrection, because clearly you have never lived in a country, or you never even studied any history that involves a nation where there have been legitimate insurrections. Right? The first thing you need to fucking ask yourself is, okay, was it an insurrection? If it was an insurrection, why was nobody who was arrested? Why were there no guns? Why was there not a single gun? Sure, you can claim people have insurrections without guns, but then it's not really an insurrection because you're not even actually attempting to overthrow the government, especially the most powerful government on planet Earth, unless you're doing it through actual violent force that is matched to the capability of the government, right? When you see insurrections in other nations, it usually involves military coups and the military coming in with guns and military technology or military weaponry in order to fucking have an insurrection. Or large, massive groups of people coming together with firearms and weapons to overthrow a government or something like that. They arrested 1,200 people, guys. 1,200 people in a country of like 350 million. And not a single one of them had a gun. You're stupid if you believe it was an insurrection. That's it. So, back to the case with this whole Ron DeSantis thing, right?
Was she was able to delay this and never went in front of the Florida Senate, where I think they would have found her guilty and removed her permanently. And so she was able to kind of manipulate that. Obviously, it's a very Democrat area, so when you run as a Dem here, you have an advantage. But I will say this. You have a responsibility to faithfully execute the laws of the state of Florida. You do.
That right there is accurate. It does not matter who elected you. The law is the law, okay? And if you don't like the law, then you collect enough people to vote in people to change the law. I understand that, and I understand there are some laws that are absolutely tyrannical and fucked up, and when people can't change them through the legitimate democratic process of our constitutional republic, then it is your responsibility as an American to exercise your Second Amendment right and overthrow legitimate tyrannical governments. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat elected by Democrats and you disagree with the law. That does not mean that you get to ignore the law or violate the law or anything like that. You still uphold the fucking law, right? That's how it works. And if you don't want to play by the rules of a functional society, you can get the fuck out, or you can deal with the repercussions of not upholding the law or following the law. Just like all of the people under Joe Biden's administration who violated the law and allowed illegal immigration into this country need to be jailed and tried. Right? They all broke the law. They all intentionally broke the law. It does not matter if someone comes to you and tells you break the law. The law is the law. That's it. And until the law is changed, then you follow the fucking law. Right? Unless the law is telling you to do something that is ethically egregious. Like the law is like, okay, you have to go out and lynch one black man. Yeah, ignore that fucking law. That's fucked up. You don't do shit like that, right? But just because you disagree with the law doesn't mean that you fucking ignore it, right? Most people disagree with speed limits on the road in certain areas. They think that's retarded. It's way too slow. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, but the posted speed limit sign, we all agree it's retarded, but it's the posted speed limit sign. And the law is the law, and the law exists to fucking maintain order and discipline within a nation. Okay?
Not have the ability to pick and choose which laws you're going to enforce. You don't have the ability or the authority to let the inmates run the asylum. So I know the Attorney General is keeping a close eye on what she's doing. That could end up on my desk if there's proof that somebody is neglecting their duties or satisfying one of the other provisions of the Florida Constitution. Then obviously I could act again. But that's separate from any type of grand jury, and those grand juries are outside my purview. So I have no comment on it. But two, even if I knew anything, it wouldn't be appropriate. But two, I don't know anything because it's not something that I have control over. All right, thanks everybody.
I honestly really hate the division that occurred between Trump and Ron DeSantis, because every time I've listened to this man speak, he is very straightforward, right? You might disagree with some of the things he does, which I don't, but you might. Okay. I think he's actually a very sound governor and a very reasonable governor. But you notice how what he said right there? Like, he didn't use this opportunity to bash a Democrat or some shit like that. He said that the question is about the grand jury investigation into that state attorney. He has no idea what's going on. He's not privy to that. That's not under his purview. Yeah, I agree. He's not even the governor of my state. I fucking wish he was, because we have a terrible governor, and that's why we have the highest crime rate in the United States in New Mexico. New Mexico has the highest crime rate in the United States. Do you know how insane that is? When people every single day are being shot and murdered in Chicago, and they have Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, and they literally have multiple people shot and murdered every single day in their largest city, and in Illinois, and in New Mexico we have a higher crime rate, right? And it wasn't always this way. It's just started to happen after we had Michelle Lujan Grisham as the governor, and that's just the truth. People might want to refute it, but when you're the leader of an organization for example, right? You're the leader of an organization and the organization's doing terrible. It's because you as the leader are not doing an effective job in what you're supposed to do to ensure it. Do I blame her for the crime that's occurring? Not all of it, no, because it's not like she's the one who's going out committing the crimes, right? I'm a reasonable person. But when you allow people to go out and commit crimes, and you allow it to become rampant, and you're the leader of a state and you have the power to stop it and you don't, then you become culpable and share responsibility for the fucking crimes. But back to Ron DeSantis, right? I always get off topic. I'm very sorry. I'm trying to draw parallels to help people understand better of where I'm coming from. All right. So Ron DeSantis right there, very plain, simple, easy to understand language. Didn't bash anyone. He said it's outside of my purview, and then he explained what's in his purview and that what he has done and why he did it, right? We heard that right here. Now, right? Look at Slingshot News. Look at what they say. They quote Ron DeSantis, I suspended her. Ron DeSantis brags about suspending an African-American politician in his state. Where did he say, haha, fuck her, she's African-American, I'm suspending her? And she's not African-American, need I mind you? She's actually an American. She did not immigrate here and then gain citizenship. She's not an African immigrant who gained citizenship in the US. My wife is an African immigrant because she's an Egyptian which is part of Africa, who immigrated to the United States. So technically, and she gained citizenship. She is an African American, right? Now, the only leeway you have in being declared as a insert whatever American is if you are the first generation children of an individual or individuals who became insert whatever other title American who immigrated to the country. Okay? But by then, like, if your parents immigrated to the US from Africa and they're African Americans and then they give birth to 2 children here, they are then Americans. They're not African Americans. They didn't come from Africa. They're Americans, right? Stop pushing the divide. Nowhere in there, I can't have your governor. Well, trust me, I know, but I wish. A man can dream, right? Stop pushing the divide. Nowhere in here, the question that was asked didn't bring up race. Ron DeSantis didn't bring up race. Nobody brought up race. They literally only brought up the woman being a state attorney, and she was not enforcing the law, so she was removed. It had nothing to do with her race. It had everything to do with her actions. So why is it that leftists keep trying to frame it as if it's a racial issue? Ron DeSantis is not a white man. Look at his last fucking name. Okay? Now, right here. Just Me LSJA. It has everything to do with her race and sex. We have voted for her twice. Twice she has won. Twice she's done her job. Governor lifted shows doesn't want her in the job because 1, she won't cater to his whims. 2, her race, her sex. Everyone down here knows this. It's time others learn what he's been up to. Ron DeSantis has a wife. He has children. Yes, there are some men out there who legitimately hate women. And there are actually a lot more women out there who just legitimately hate men, right? But you guys have to understand something. Most mothers do not hate their sons. Most fathers do not hate their daughters. Most mothers and fathers love their children. They might not do a good job in showing that they love their children or anything like that, but they do love their children. And in whatever way they think is relevant, they try to show that they love their children or take care of their children. Most people don't go, oh, well, you know what? I don't want you to have any rights. Like, if I'm a father, what you think I would go to my daughter and say, I don't want you to have the right to vote? No, that's retarded. Most men don't do that. Most women don't do that to their sons or anything like that. So how can somebody assert this without any evidence whatsoever? He's married. I'm pretty sure Ron DeSantis has daughters. Right? But you're falsely asserting this. It doesn't matter if you voted for her. She violated the law. Her violation is actually her not enforcing the law. So through his power as the governor, he had her removed because he is the commander-in-chief of your state. And she's an attorney who works for the state. It doesn't matter if you fucking elected her. And if the governor of Florida was a Democrat and the person not enforcing the law was a Republican, unless the law is legitimately unconstitutional, and this goes both ways, unless the law is unconstitutional, that's when you don't enforce the law or you don't follow the law, is because it's unconstitutional. Okay? But even if the governor of Florida was a Democrat and this attorney was a white man who was doing the same thing as apparently this black woman, he should be suspended as well. And most Republicans actually believe that. Right? It has nothing to do with her race. It has nothing to do with her sex, her gender. It wasn't brought up. It wasn't brought up at all. So according to this person's logic, right? Well, guess what? The American people voted for Trump. That means any Democrat who tries to impeach or remove Trump for any action that he does, it's because they are racist towards white people and they are sexist against men. Does that sound reasonable? Does that sound like something a reasonable person would assert by default? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't if you're a fucking common sense individual and you're reasonable. You would not assert that because it's not. California okays a $2.8 billion bill to close Medicaid funding gap after expanding immigrant coverage. Sacramento, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed legislation Monday to close a $2.8 billion budget gap in the state's Medicaid services and ensure coverage through June for 15 million people, including immigrants who receive healthcare via the program. Just so you know, if you are a Californian on California Medicaid service, because it says the state's Medicaid services. So I don't know if California has a separate Medicaid to the federal government or their wording is them just mirroring how the process works, right? The legislation is part of a state solution to solve $6.2 billion hole in the state's Medicaid budget. It comes a year after California launched an ambitious coverage expansion to provide free healthcare to all low-income adults, regardless of their immigration status. The expansion is costing far more than the state projected and could force the Democratic governor and Democratic lawmakers to reevaluate future coverage for millions of people. No shit. So if you are a Californian, you are a legitimate legal resident of the state of California and you're an American citizen, you're a legitimate legal fucking citizen of the country in which the state of California is a part of. You are paying taxes, fucking tons of taxes to a state that then is using those taxes for people who are not paying the same amount of taxes into the system as you are, as you have been, or as you ever will. Okay? Your money is going to fund other people's medical fucking coverage. And you might be thinking to yourself, I'm not in the best medical condition and I need more for Medicaid in order to cover the stuff for me. Well, guess what? You vote for Democrats, you're going to get Democrats. Democrats do not care for you. They care about power, and they try to say that Republicans only care about power. Great, that's fine. If you want to say both sides care about power, that's legitimate. But Republicans understand that the power they have only comes from the people, right? Everybody knows that, like, that's the whole point of politics and government is power and is control. No shit. So just remove that out of the factor. We all know that. Every person on planet Earth in retrospect to their own fucking form of government understands that. We're not retarded. Okay? But it's about where people believe the power derives from. And Republicans believe that the power that is vested into the state or into the federal government is only actually given to them by the people. Democrats believe that the power given to the state is from the state and by the government and not the people. So they do whatever the fuck they want, no matter how people feel. It's just that simple. So let me ask you, they just approved a $2.8 billion budget because they already passed a $6.2 billion budget that's in the hole by $2.8 billion. The budget they passed, they needed to almost add another half of that fucking budget to compensate for it because they're giving it to illegal immigrants. And it's costing you, the taxpayers. And then they increase your taxes. And then you can't afford anything. So because you can't afford anything, they say, oh, let's pass this budget that we pay for it using your taxes. So then you don't have to afford it. Then they can't afford it. So then they increase your fucking taxes. You see where this keeps going under Democrat leadership? Y'all understand that's how it works, right? That's how they get you. They create the problem. Intentionally. They intentionally create the problems. They know what the effect is going to be. They know that it costs too much. They pass bills to increase the minimum wage and force everybody to have to keep paying more and more for services or resources or consumer goods or something like that. They know that's going to increase the prices of stuff. They know then in turn that's going to mean that you have less money in your pocket to pay for stuff. Then they turn around and they increase the taxes so that they can tell you that by them forcefully taking more of your money, they can provide more to you. And then at the end of the day, none of your money is yours. None of your freedoms are yours. And the state provides everything to you. And that's what you get under Democrat leadership. So I hope more Democrats wake up to this, because it's just evident. It's just evident. It's just common sense. Right? Like, Republicans don't advocate for increasing taxes on people. Sure, all the left wants to say right now is all this dumb shit about tariffs, like they fucking know anything about tariffs. They had nothing to say about tariffs under Trump's first administration. And let me point this back out as well, because some people have been pointing this out. Democrats are saying it's a tax on people. Tariffs are a tax on the consumers. So if tariffs are a tax on the consumers and tariffs are only regressive, why does every nation on planet Earth have tariffs? And why do they, and so what? They're all just inflicting damages on their own people? They're all just, they want to make things cost more for their own people? No, they don't. The only difference is that when they implement tariffs, their government has control over the market, so then they get the money. Because they don't have to fucking increase or decrease prices because they're in control of the market. But we live under a free market, so people of other corporations are able to decide whatever the fuck they want for those corporations. And if the companies decide to increase the prices instead of onshoring manufacturing in the US or sourcing materials from the US or whatever, that is their choice to respond to the tariffs that way. The tariffs there wasn't one option to responding for the tariffs. Multiple options were presented to people months in advance, years in advance. Everybody in this country who voted for Trump and everyone who didn't vote for Trump knew that tariffs were coming if Trump got into power. They saw the writing on the wall that the Democrat Party was going to, that they were lying about the polling data and that Trump was actually going to win. They had time to prepare for this. They had time to shore up the defenses and start onshoring manufacturing or doing whatever other kind of fucking thing they figured out to do to compensate for tariffs, and they chose not to. They chose not to because the companies would rather outsource instead of having to pay Americans decent wages. They would rather keep exploiting cheap fucking labor in all of these very fucking impoverished nations. They're taking advantage of people. Just like they say the poor here. Right? That's what the left says. The left says, oh my God, we have to increase the minimum wage because they're exploiting the poor as they bring in illegal immigrants so that the companies they say they don't support can exploit the illegal immigrants to pay them even less than minimum wage because it's not being verified through any legal means because those individuals are here illegally and employed illegally. Do you see what I'm fucking getting to here? Do you see what I'm pointing out? Right? There's already companies here that manufacture and source their materials from the US, right? And they already have relatively low prices. And their prices would actually be lower if they were able to expand their companies in the United States to mass produce items, right, to then sell in the US. But they can't because they have to compete with foreign interests and foreign labor that pays employees so much less, right? The podcast I listen to, Timcast IRL, they have a skateboard company called the Boonies. They sell their boards for $55. That's not too bad for a fucking skateboard. I'm not a skateboarder, right? But $55. That is something they have already established in the United States, manufacturing and sourcing materials from the United States, $55. So guess what? The tariffs that are being implemented by the US and by other nations have no effect on that. $55 is there to stay, right? So this is me just pointing out to you, the left causes the problems and then they lie to you about the solutions that Republicans put forward, right? Trump wants to get rid of income tax, right? Which means that you don't pay any taxes to the government straight out of your salaries, right? So instead of getting your leave and earnings statement or your pay stub or whatever the fuck you want to refer to it as, right? When you get that and you look at how much you made gross, you don't see all those reductions. Those reductions no longer happen. They're no longer taking money out for Social Security, for Medicaid, for state tax, for federal tax, for any of that shit. You get all of your money. Where do they then get that money? When you go to buy shit, right? Then the money comes from there. So people who want to constantly buy shit and they have more money to buy shit, they're the ones who then fucking spend, they spend an equal amount proportionally to their money as they spend towards going towards those programs. It's literally an equal way of taxing people based on consumer habits. And if you don't want to pay all those taxes, all you have to do is consume less, which would probably improve your health. And if everybody in the US consumed less, it would improve their health. And then the healthcare system wouldn't be so burdened by so many unhealthy Americans. And then there would be less demand. So there would be more supply. So then medical services and medical treatments and medical fucking pharmaceuticals and all that kind of stuff would go down in price. Imagine that. Imagine that. And then if companies don't reduce the prices, then we have a market that doesn't have to compete with foreign markets. So somebody here can establish a market because they have a good moral foundation. And that's what happens under free capitalism. And they can start manufacturing and producing pharmaceuticals in the US, sourced from ingredients and stuff in the US, and paying US workers. And then the larger they get, the more they can mass produce, which means the fucking lower they can drop their prices. This is what people don't even think about when they think about offshoring fucking American manufacturing. We lose jobs. We lose out on an incentive structure for the free market to actually operate justly in the United States. Okay? Then we're also giving a ton of money to all of the nations we consider adversaries. How does that make any fucking sense? From Euronews. Imagine that. Unknown leftist extremist group claims responsibility for Athens bombing. From Oman al-Yayi. A newly emerged militant group called the Revolutionary Class Self-Defense. And this is what I'm telling you, Western nations, you really do need to wake up to leftists in the West. Right? You really fucking do. Leftists actually compose a majority of violence in Western nations for like the last few decades. Outside of what's defined as terrorism, right? The Friday evening blast caused minor damage but no injuries following a warning call made to two media outlets approximately 40 minutes beforehand. The extremist group also said it was behind another explosive device that went off near the Labor Ministry building in the Greek capital in early February. In a lengthy statement posted online Sunday and seen by Euronews, the group said the attacks were part of an armed opposition against the state, dedicating them to the Palestinian people and their heroic resistance. You see? You see why we need to deport fucking people who support Palestine? It's breeding extremism. It's not just breeding extremism in the United States. It's breeding extremism in the West because they are falsely and intentionally misrepresenting the conflict that occurs between Israel and the Palestinian people. Right? The left-leaning organization also referenced a man killed last year while assembling an explosive device in an Athens apartment. The group linked its actions to widespread anger over Greece's deadliest rail disaster, which occurred in 2023 when a freight train and a passenger train were accidentally directed on the same track near Tempe, killing 57 people and injuring dozens more. The tragedy exposed serious safety flaws in Greece's rail infrastructure and has sparked ongoing protests, particularly by families of the victims. Yes, well, if you guys don't know this about Greece, Greece actually has a very poor economy in comparison to a majority of the European Union, especially in comparison to like France and Britain and Germany, right? Or like Sweden or Denmark or uh, fucking whatever. Okay? Why is that? Because after all these new nations comprised or came together and made the European Union and they adopted the euro, it destroyed their economies. So effectively, you have members of the European Union that are like basically the slave labor happening in Europe, right? Why does Greece doesn't have money for sophisticated rail technology, right? Like, look, guys. Population of Greece 10.5 million. That's it. That's the entirety of Greece. Greece is significantly sized. It's also very mountainous. Right? 10.5. Whoops. Jesus. Oh my god, dude. GDP of Greece. The economy of Greece is the 52nd largest in the world, with a nominal GDP of 252.732 billion annually, right? The GDP per capita of Greece in 2024 was $24,724. Sure, it's gone up, right? I'm pretty sure $24,000 is what we consider the poverty line in the United States, in which they're referencing the money in dollars and not euros, but they use euros. Okay, so they actually have less money than this number because they use euros, and things in the European Union are more expensive than they are in the United States. You guys see the problem here? So they make up 1/4 of $1 trillion a year, GDP of the European Union. The European Union's GDP is estimated to be 20.29 trillion in 2025. Right? 20.29, and the European Union also has more people than the United States. 20.29 trillion. Okay? Greece doesn't even make up this portion right here. Okay? So you guys see what the issue is? Oh, okay. Denmark's not part of the European Union. I'm pretty sure that's Switzerland, right? They're just smack dab in the middle of the fucking European Union. Like, no, no, thank you. The tragedy exposed blah blah blah. With the blood not yet dry, they attributed the accident to human error and the chronic deficiencies of the Greek state. The group wrote, accusing the government of using the tragedy to justify further privatization and deregulation. Here's the problem: what people don't understand. Privatization, okay, removes the burden from the federal government. You may or may not like that, whatever. Okay? That's what it does, though. Okay? It removes the burden from the federal government and it places it on privatized organizations. Okay? Which means that the entire financial burden lies on them, which means that the only way that they recoup their money or that they make money is by actually providing the service in which they're there for. And the only way they can provide their service and make money, which they have a interest in doing, is by doing a really good fucking job. People who work for governments have no interest in doing a good job because the money is guaranteed and they don't care if it fucking happens or not because they can always take more money from the fucking people. Okay? So, privatization is not bad. It can be bad. Yes, there's pros and cons to everything, of course, but most of the time it's not. And deregulation is also not bad. Right? There are laws in certain states, which laws are regulations, right? Where you can't chew bubble gum outside on Sunday, or you can't live with a woman that you're not married to, or some shit like that. But they exist as a regulation, and yes, those aren't usually processed, but regulations are always processed, even if they are no longer relevant. They don't skip over these regulations because they're no longer relevant. They still have to adhere to them and stuff like that. Right? Which means they have to pay money for them and all that. There's nothing wrong with deregulation. You can get to a point of overregulation. In most places, bureaucratically do always get to a point of overregulation. And this is why, ask yourself, why does it take so long to go to the DMV and get a driver's license? Why does it take so long to get a passport? Why does it take so long to get a visa? Why does it take so long to do X, Y, and Z? Ask yourself, why does it take so long as a member of a European nation where you have socialized healthcare? Why does it take so long? Yeah, because privatized healthcare and prisons are going so well in the US. They are. Privatized healthcare and prisons in the US. Privatized healthcare in the US is more expensive, but better quality. Privatized prisons in the US also have better living conditions for people in prisons than state-run prisons. Because guess what? Privatized prisons still have to follow state regulations. Hey, I'm just saying, my older brother's been in prison. My younger brother's been in prison. I've been to jail. I kind of know a little bit about it. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran who knows what socialized healthcare is like with getting healthcare from the VA, and it's fucking terrible. I'm supposed to have a biannual blood draw, right? Which means every 6 months I'm supposed to have blood drawn from the VA. I've been out of the Marine Corps for like basically 4 years now, right? I've been out of the Marine Corps. You know how many times I've had my blood drawn from the VA in 4 years? Twice. So I get where you're coming from. There's problems to everything. Like I just said, there's pros and cons, right? I don't know if you were in the stream then, right? But what I'm saying is privatization is actually better than state-run shit. Also, the active TRICARE, great, but VA sucks. Agreed. Yes. Active TRICARE is great because they have a necessity to, it's like a priority, right? Like to facilitate it, right? But we both agree the VA sucks. The VA sucks dick. Okay? But it's the same thing in European countries, right? A YouTuber I follow, his name is Hidden Xperia, right? He's a Brit. All right? He does Halo videos. Love him to death. I saw a post a month ago about he was saying how he had a cyst on his eye and it took him like 8 months. It took him 8 months to be seen for the cyst. Now it's going to take him like another year before they operate on the cyst. So he decided to go get private healthcare. Right? So there's ups and downs to anything. But privatization, like I said, can be bad because the market is destroyed by foreign interests. Stationed in England and Germany, a lot of people love their healthcare. None of my English or German friends or English or German people that I've talked to love their healthcare. I have never heard them say they love their healthcare. They think it's awesome, right? They think that it's cool that they have socialized healthcare. Why is that? Because the English and Germans, I mean, back then, right? So so let me put it this way. You're probably older than me, right? I'm only 28. I don't know how old you are. Okay? Um I wasn't stationed in England or Germany. I was stationed in Egypt, Belgium, and Mexico, right? I have never heard foreigners of countries with socialized healthcare say it's great. They just appreciate the fact that they think that it's free, even though it's paid for by their taxes, because they're already in better health. Love Belgium, good food and beer. I don't drink. The food was good. The food was good, but I don't drink. But I'll take your word at that because the other Marines that I was there with, they loved drinking Belgian beer. Um, but like I was saying, right? So when you talk to a European, you have to understand they're already in better health than an American. So they don't mind waiting a long time to receive health care because basically a majority of their health care is just general like wellness checks for Europeans. Now, if you talk to any European who's actually had to have like comprehensive surgery or something that's like life altering or something that's very serious, they fucking hate the medical system because it takes forever for them to be seen. Whereas with privatized healthcare, sure, it might be more expensive, but the timetable is much more short and you're paying for higher quality health coverage, right? So there's always ups and downs. If you're a person in good health, yeah, you would love for there to be socialized healthcare that's actually not super expensive because all you need is a wellness check for a doctor to stick his finger in your asshole and tell you that, hey, you're in good health. Keep up the good work. And then you're like, yay, great. And then he gives you a gold star. He smacks you on the ass. He pats you on the head. And then you walk out the door, right? But we don't have that in the United States. 70% of the population of the United States is overweight and 40% of the population is severely obese, right? Socialized healthcare is not an option in this country until we fix our health. I mean, that's all off topic though, because we're talking about this article with an unknown leftist extremist group. And Yan Yan, thank you for being here. Welcome in. How are you doing this fine evening? Greek authorities are actively investigating the attacks with surveillance footage and mobile phone data under review. They noted the reemergence of homegrown and extremist groups which have carried out low-scale bombings since the 1970s, causing damage but rarely any injuries. Well, that's good, I guess. While older networks have been dismantled, newer factions have surfaced in recent years, representing what officials describe as a new generation of domestic extremists. Yeah, no shit. How? Okay, here's what I don't understand. Okay, this is what doesn't make any sense to me. And I understand that people have to do radical shit sometimes or crazy shit sometimes because they have to bring attention to something. All right, man. Thanks for the convo. We don't see eye to eye on everything, but I like learning and I like common sense. I agree, man. I agree. 100%. I would love to hear what you don't agree on. But so for someone who carries out an attack like this, they claim that they're carrying out this attack because they're upset about Greeks that died because of poor infrastructure that was handled by the government. So now, because of their domestic bombings, they're detracting further from allowing resources to go to infrastructure and stuff like that because now the government of Greece has to spend resources on catching them, investigating them, trying them, basically proactively hunting them down, resources to clean up bombings, and God forbid there's any injuries or deaths. Then you just null and voided your entire argument for carrying out the bombings, right? And again, I understand people got to do crazy shit at some times, but I don't understand how this actually solves anything in Greece. You don't have to blow shit up in order to bring attention to it. All right. While the train service has been privatized, Hellenic Railways remains in charge of maintaining the railway infrastructure, including tracks and stations. In its statement, the revolutionary class self-defense has blamed the Italian company for the Tempe accident without providing any proof of its claims. That would be, that would probably be great. Hellenic Train, which now operates as a subsidiary of Italy's uh, Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane, following its sale in 2017, was previously part of Greece's state-owned railway system. Okay, so Hellenic Railways, the train service has been privatized, but the infrastructure is still maintained by Hellenic Railways. Okay. Yeah, but again, I just don't understand. I don't understand why that would be that would be the goal. Ooh, not anymore. New York Post: ICE agents snatch anti-Israel Colombia protester Mosen Madawi during his U.S. citizenship appointment. Immigration agents nabbed an anti-Israel Columbia University protester while he was at an appointment to obtain his U.S. citizenship in Vermont Monday. Good. Get him the fuck out of here. Palestinian student Mosen Madawi, who hails from the West Bank, was detained as a U.S. citizen. Detained at a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services office in Burlington after spending 10 years in the U.S. and obtaining his green card, according to Intercept. If it took you 10 years to get a fucking green card, you don't belong in this country anyways. It now appears, however, that the Trump administration is seeking to cut Madawi's time short in the U.S. after he helped lead anti-Israel protests on Columbia's Morningside Heights campus until last spring. Good. Get him the fuck out of here. I love this. Oh my God, I love this. Video footage posted on X Monday appeared to show Madawi being escorted with his hands shackled in front of him and surrounded by federal agents who placed him into an unmarked vehicle. It's kind of a death sentence, Madawi, who previously led Colombia's Palestinian Student Union, said, according to The Intercept. Stop letting the press speak to these people. They have no business speaking to these people, and all they're trying to do is basically make martyrs of these individuals because my people are being killed unjustly in an indiscriminate way. We've already broken down the math here between the numbers claimed by Hamas and the rest of the world, and it's completely false. Probability dictates, and probability has a deviation, right? But more or less within that probability, it's pretty fucking accurate, right? His people aren't being killed unjustly or indiscriminately. Okay? The indiscriminate way, we literally proved through probability, is false. Unjustly, are you kidding me? October 7th, 2023? If the Israelis, if there was peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis right now, right? Say this war never happened. But say on October 7th, 2023, on October, so say there was no war in Palestine right now, okay? October 7th, 2023, say it was Israel that went into Gaza and just murdered 1,200 Palestinians and took 250 hostages. Then everyone would say that it would be just for Palestine to start attacking Israel. So why isn't it just for Israel to attack Palestine? It is just. It is just. And we already broke down the math. The fact that the Palestinian Authority, which declare the Gaza Health Ministry, which declares how many Palestinians have died, right? And that's not just in Gaza. That's between Gaza and the West Bank. Okay? They have said that in a year and 7 months, okay? Almost a year and 7 months, that almost 51,000 Palestinians have died in a year and a half time frame. They don't list why. They don't say that they're not saying that they're trying to declare that all 51,000 of those Palestinians have died because of a war. There are no other records of any other Palestinians dying. So I guess no, not even a single other Palestinian has died, right? Because of anything other than the war. It's kind of like COVID. It's the same thing they did with COVID. You get shot in the head, but you have COVID, you died because of COVID. Hamas is actually reporting very accurate numbers for what is considered the average mortality rate of the Palestinian people. Okay? And I'm only bringing this up, Yan, because you're new here and you haven't seen it. But I broke down the math. Egypt, right? The country in which my wife comes from. Give me 1 second. I'll respond to your comments right after I finish what I'm saying. Egypt, right? They are an Arab Muslim nation. It's the country my wife comes from. Jordan, they are an Arab Muslim nation. The queen of Jordan is also Palestinian, right? Jordan has an average annual mortality rate of 4 Jordanians die out of every 1,000. Okay? Egypt has a 6.9 out of every 1,000 for Egyptians. Okay? Now, Egypt has access to much more food than Jordan and much more food than Palestine. Egypt has more of a privatized healthcare system, and Jordan has a socialized healthcare system. Okay, so the reason that Egypt more than likely has a higher mortality rate than Jordan, because they're by like effectively 3, right? Is because they suffer from more illnesses related to obesity and stuff like that because they have more food than Jordan. Okay? So, here's what I decided. I decided based off of probability because nowhere you literally cannot find any credible sources that confirm information out of Palestine regarding health statistics or anything like that. So I used 2 Arab Muslim nations that are in very close proximity to Palestine and they're ethnically and religiously similar to the Palestinian people because the Palestinian people are Arab Muslims as well. So I said, okay, well, the Palestinians don't have all of the same kind of shit as Jordan or Egypt. So let's just be safe and let's say that they have an on average mortality rate of 5.5 because 5.5 is in between 6.9 and 4.0, right? If you do the math, in comparison to their entire population, which is 6 million, right? Estimated to be 6 million, you divide that by 1,000, you have 6,000 groups. Okay. You then multiply 6,000 by 5.5, then you divide it by 2, and then add that half back to the total number because it's been a year and a half. Because the original number you'll get will be the total population of what would be considered the average mortality rate of Palestinians, which is outside of war, right? So like if they're not at war, this is what you would have as many Palestinians die in this year, okay? Now, if you take that mortality rate in which I proposed, okay, and I didn't just come up with the number to match the data in which Hamas is providing. I told you 6.9 from Egypt and 4.0 from Jordan. And that's reported on from the Egyptian government and from the Jordanian government, right? Those are it's their sources, okay? So 5.5 is in the middle because Palestine doesn't have as much access to food as Egypt, and they don't have a robust, comprehensive, sophisticated, socialized medical system like Jordan, right? So we could say that they're probably healthier than Egyptians on average, but they can't get the medical treatment they need for everything. So 5.5, right? That's me being fair. Okay? And I don't have my calculator activated on OBS right now. But you have 5.5 and you multiply it by 6,000, okay? You have 33,000. You then divide it by 2 and you have 16,500. So then you add 33,000 back to that because the conflict has been going on for a year and a half, and you have 49,500. That would be the average mortality rate of Palestinians for a year and a half time frame. That's how many of them would die outside of war. CIA World Factbook has them at 2.1 million as of 2024. That's just in the West Bank. I mean, not the West Bank. That's just them in Gaza alone. That's not the entire Palestinian population between Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the Gaza Health Ministry doesn't only report on Palestinian deaths out of Gaza. They report on Palestinian deaths across all of what they consider the Palestinian people, right? So 49,500. Hamas says their number's at 51,000. So I'll give credit where credit's due. Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist organization. It's recognized as such by like the European Union, South American countries, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, I think I already said the European Union. Russia and China also recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, and Saudi Arabia and Egypt also recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. So as far as a terrorist organization can go, they're actually almost very accurate. They're probably accurate on reporting how many deaths have occurred in a year and a half time frame for the Palestinian people. Okay? because they say 51,000 in a year and a half. The number I have right now is 49,500, which means based on probability, that's less than 2,000 have most likely died directly due to the war. Now, my wife brought up a good point. We can't know for sure. We can't know for sure because it could have been a hospital full of all the people that were about to die and Israel blew it up. So they're going to chalk it up to the war. Okay. So benefit of the doubt. But what I'm saying is the number they propose, the left and Hamas both try to assert that it's because of the war, and that's simply not true. The probability of a majority of the number of deaths they have reported being because of the war is not likely whatsoever. The majority of deaths that they report are naturally due to fucking natural causes because it's on par with the average mortality rate of the Palestinian people. Okay? So I'm not arguing that I'm not saying that 51,000 Palestinians haven't died in a year and a half. I'm saying 51,000 Palestinians haven't died because of the war in a year and a half. Okay? See, I have a problem with this stuff because Trump won't always be in power. He is setting the precedent for the next president to do the same. They were already doing it, man. They were already doing it. This country has been doing it forever. We put the Japanese in fucking internment camps. We were deporting Italians and Germans out of the United States during World War II. The precedent already exists and always has been there. Okay? Just because a precedent can be set does not mean that you should not exercise power. Right? Because if the precedent is set, that doesn't mean that it's going to be enforced in a negative way, but executive branch sucking up more and more power. The executive branch isn't sucking up more and more power. The executive branch is exercising the power that it already has. Right? Like the Illegal Enemies Act that the left keeps citing that Trump is using to deport criminal gang members to El Salvador. That was passed by the Congress as a power for the executive branch. And now the Supreme Court stated, right? The Supreme Court technically sided and didn't side with Trump. They said that you can continue to deport illegal immigrants, but they have to have a hearing, which they already have hearings. When I was in jail last year, a majority of everyone I was in jail with were illegal immigrants, and I had to sit in the courtroom with like 20 of them while they were getting their hearing. I wasn't involved in any illegal immigration or anything like that. Right? So could you please point out to me what you think is the executive branch sucking up more power? Because as it stands right now, there are 17, but Congress has to declare war. Congress hasn't declared war since World War II. It doesn't have to be wartime. It says it's during wartime and threats of invasion or like a national emergency. And guess what? Joe Biden had to declare illegal immigration as a national emergency, but he did it quietly so that FEMA was able to appropriate funding to aid in efforts for illegal immigrants, like housing or resettlement or stuff like that. Because you can only access FEMA funds under national emergencies. So how they were getting funding out of FEMA legally, Joe Biden declared legal immigration to be a national emergency. That's what I'm saying. Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Clinton, Obama, Biden all crept on more power. I don't think they did. Because we had FDR, right? Wait, it was FDR who was he was the 4-term president, right? I think he got elected for a 4th, but he only served 3. Or he didn't serve the full 4th term, if I remember correctly. Jesus. First and second. Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, because he died in office, right? Whatever, whatever. We all know that FDR served more than 2 terms, right? I get what you're claiming, right? Um, and I do agree with you because I do think you're actually you are correct with at least from Bush Jr. I technically I was born in 96, right? So I don't know anything about Clinton or Bush Sr., right? Basically I start from Bush Jr., okay? In my understanding. Bush Jr. absolutely did you take more power not just for the executive branch, but the entirety of the federal government under the Patriot Act, 100%. And Obama and Biden also exercised it, okay, as well. I don't think Trump is creating new powers to exert his control or his authority over the executive branch or the American people, right? Um, and it would to me it's really hard to make that argument simply based on the fact that there are currently 17 nationwide injunctions levied against Donald Trump and his administration for the actions they've tried to take, right? So do you have something a little more specific about what you mean by sucking up more power? Because like if you think about it, right? Trump is actually Trump is responsible for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And people might they agree or disagree on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but fundamentally if you remove your emotions or your thoughts on Roe v. Wade, Trump actually reduced the power of the federal government and gave the power of abortion over the states. Trump like predecessors more and more executive actions. Yes, you are right on that, right? The executive orders are out of control. But at the same time, executive orders are a check on the legislative branch for the legislative branch not acting, right? That are not in the executive branch's lane. Can you point to one that's not within the executive branch, like within their scope? I'm just asking for one. Um, just because clearly we see things differently, so I don't perceive them. And I've also brought up multiple of his executive orders that people have tried to say are unconstitutional, and we brought up the constitutional sections that they try to say it violated, and it actually didn't violate them at all. Because if it did violate them, the Supreme Court would have immediately come down and fucking overturned it. Just any executive action which you can think of or what you know that you think isn't within the scope of the executive branch. Because fundamentally, so here's what I will explain, right? You have the 3 branches of government. You have the judicial branch, you have the executive branch, and you have the legislative branch. Okay? The point of the legislative Doge Illegal Aliens Act, Doge isn't unconstitutional. Doge, he didn't create an agency. He renamed the United States Digital Service, which was created by Obama and was already funded by Congress. He just renamed it to Doge. And because it's an executive agency, he as the chief executive has the authority to direct them to do what they're doing. And actually what they're doing right now was the original intent of the United States Digital Service. In the Illegal Aliens Act. Are you talking about the Enemies Act, or let me look it up? Are you talking about the Enemies Act? Congress holds the purse. The funds are already passed by Congress, but they froze that. Yes, Congress holds the purse. Congress holds the purse, right? Think about it this way. Let me point something out to you. In most Western relationships between a man and a woman, the man is supposed to be the one who has the money and he just holds the wallet, but the woman is the one who spends it, right? And you could say that's kind of like a traditional mentality or something, but the same thing literally applies to our government. Congress appropriates funds. They are not they appropriate funds for the executive branch to utilize. It does not mean that the executive branch has to use that money. Right? So let me put it this way, okay? Say today that Congress said we need to give $100 billion to Russia. Would you agree with that or not? Would you agree that if Congress right now said, okay, let me ask you something. Um, do you support are you so with the Ukraine Russia war, do you support Ukraine? Do you support Russia? Are you against the war in general? What? Against war, isolationist, but us president had promised to protect. We should live up to the word. Um, okay, so you're against the war. Are you against Russia? Like, do you think that Russia is ideologically an adversary to the United States? I'm not trying to like get you or anything like that. Or say that you're bad. Okay, so if Congress right now said that they passed a budget saying we have to give $100 billion to Russia right now, do you agree with that? Or do you think Trump should not send that money to Russia? Exactly. You see what I'm saying? Congress has the authority to create the budget. They don't have the authority to spend the money. Does that make sense? Um let's see. Appropriations clause, right? Constitution.congress.gov. Um Actually, let's also do Article 1, Section 8. Uh, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, right? The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States, which they're actually not, right? Okay? Nowhere in here does it give Congress the authority. Like, they come up with the budget, they determine how much we're going to tax people and stuff like that, but they can't force the executive branch to spend the money. Does that make sense? Like, they hand the executive branch $200, but the executive branch doesn't have to spend $200. I see your point, but I'm talking about in a general sense. I'm all about freedom. Freedoms are eroding more and more. But where do you think freedoms are eroding? I as an American citizen haven't lost a single freedom. My wife as a legal immigrant who is now a U.S. citizen hasn't lost a freedom. I got put in jail because my freedom of speech was violated. And that was under Joe Biden. You know what hasn't happened to me since Trump took office? I haven't been put in jail. What speech is being eroded? And freedom of speech, when people say freedom of speech, they think that that means all speech is free, but that's not true, and it never has been. Right? People, you like, do you know why there's labeling on forms of media like rated M or 13 plus or some shit like that? That's because the federal government has a history of limiting speech or expression and stuff like that in media consumed by other people and whatnot. Freedom of speech in its totality has never existed, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. For the most part, almost all speech should, but freedom of the press, he's attacking that. The universities and colleges being beholden to Trump. No, they're not. How is he attacking the press? He hasn't used the federal government to launch lawsuits against the press. He sued ABC personally. That was him personally. And that was for defamation against Trump. Is that not his right to sue a media company for defamation? This is what you need to understand about freedom of speech, right? You have the freedom to speak. You have the freedom to say whatever the fuck you want. You are not free of consequences because of your speech. Does that make sense? Like if you're calling on people to assassinate the president, right? You're like, you need to go do it, and this is how you do it. Do you think people should be allowed to do that? Right? The universities and colleges being beholden to Trump, they're not beholden to Trump. All he has literally told them is that you need to enforce U.S. law on your campuses or the federal government is withdrawing its funding. And then they have a choice to either capitulate or not. Because guess what? Federal funding should only apply to people who follow the law. And why are private universities getting taxpayer money anyways? They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be getting taxpayer money at all. Because higher education is a choice. It's not a right, right? It's going to college is not a requirement forced by society, whereas your general education is. And that's why your general education is paid for by the government. And that's exactly why what is it? That's why there's truancy laws, right? People get in trouble, and people's parents get in trouble for kids being truant from school, which means they don't go to school or they're late very often to school because it's wasting the state or the federal government's money. That's the only reason. There's no truancy laws for somebody who's paying for a private school. You can't be taken to truancy court over that. You get what I'm saying? I'm sure you do. You seem intelligent. And I hope it helps you. Maybe you've given me a lot to think about. Got to go to sleep, work early tomorrow. I'll drop back in. Hey man, I hope to have you back, and I hope we could have more of a this discussion about a bunch of the stuff. I know you brought up some other stuff that we didn't touch on. But yeah, I hope to have you back, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for chatting the conversation. It's been great. I hope you have a good night, man, and stay safe out there. All right. All right. With that being said, everybody, I want to say thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for the support. I am Joseph Rose, the host of the Common Sense Pros and Cons podcast. And as you just witnessed, we had a conversation with a reasonable gentleman or gentlewoman. I'm not sure. I'm gonna say gentleman. Okay. And see, no bad blood, nothing like that. We had disagreements. We conversed. It was awesome. And this is what I want to promote more of. So I hope to have some more of y'all in here. And as always, just remember truth, reality, and common sense. If you have one, you'll have all three. Thank you all so much. I'll catch you in the next stream.